Look, welcome everyone, and special welcome to Councillor Curtin. You made it. Just acknowledging that we have been in workshop this morning and had a karakia, so we will move on and start with apologies, please, Leanne.
So we've had apologies from Tanya Hotmans and Councillors Henawai, Ormsby, Thompson, Hokianga and Guy Robley.
Thank you. So there's an important meeting up in Wairoa this afternoon that most of those councillors are attending, so wish them all the best up there. Any notices from anyone today? There are no notices. Any conflict of interest declarations? There are none. Confirmation of the 25th of September minutes. Anyone like to have
I'd like to move.
Councillor Van Beek move. Councillor Harding second. Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Yes, carried. Now we have our normal slot on the agenda, the public forum. So that's where members of the public notify no later than 24 hours before. We have none today, so not hearing from any of the public today. Any call for minor items?
None.
No, it's going to be super quick, isn't it? Great, thank you. So we've just got two items on the agenda then. The first one, item 6 in our list, the 2023-24 annual report adoption. So I might pass over to our CE to open this and introduce it, and then we'll go to questions.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, councillors. Just to introduce what is part of the annual calendar of the council, producing our annual report, which is an audited document that provides detail back to the community that we all serve around the performance of the organisation over the previous year. And just, I guess, a couple of comments from me by way of introduction for the 23-24 year. It was probably one of the more remarkable ones that this council will go through in terms of it being really focused on cyclone recovery and standing up a whole lot of work post-cyclone. As a result of which some of our business as usual clearly took a bit of a back seat. But during that time, just a kind of a few highlights from me. Clearly, we got through the land categorisation process, something that we entered into at government's behest without any kind of warning about how it might work, and delivered by October of that year. There were the immediate flood repairs that occurred post-cyclone on breaches and damaged stock banks, which were completed really rapidly. And then a negotiation with the Crown, and we're now in the process in the following financial year of implementing that agreement with the Crown around funding flood protection for those Category 2 areas. And I'd just add to that the silt and debris work that occurred and saw roughly $200 million worth of money come into the region from the Crown to both help commercial operators, councils and homeowners in terms of silt and debris clearance. And that work actually will come largely to a halt by Christmas as that money is expended. So a pretty momentous year that this annual report reports back on, and just like to thank governors for your guidance, leadership and support through a particularly complex year, and landing what I think is a pretty good annual report in terms of what it says about the organisation's ability to deliver under really extreme circumstances. So thank you, Chair, and I'll, with your leave, hand over to Susie, Chris and Pamela to take us through the
Thank you, Nick.
report.
With the annual report, I just wanted to further add to Nick's stating there that the auditors, as they discussed with the Risk and Audit Committee last week, will be issuing a qualified opinion with an emphasis of matter in it. The qualification relates to the opening balance of the infrastructure assets, which were not able to be revalued last year due to the cyclone, and so therefore their qualification relates to the revaluation of assets through the year. They are quite happy with the year-end value of the assets, so in some ways it's a technical qualification because of last year's qualification. They also have an emphasis on matter, which is the same as last year and relates to the inherent uncertainty associated with quantifying GHG emissions. This is similar for all councils that measure their emissions and in there. We have a couple of final outstanding matters that we are discussing with EY. I've just been talking to them. They are not expecting their audit opinion to change at all, but just ask that I mention that there are a couple of matters, one relating to the valuation of HBRIC in terms of that would be an adjustment between assets and shareholders' equity or income reserves, and one around our NEMA claims, where we have recognised NEMA claims that came in after the year-end audit are questioning again as to the validity of doing that. We are of the opinion that we should be recognising that as income. We had made the claim before the end of the year and we've got certainty about the amount. We don't anticipate that changing, but it's a final adjustment that's going through with them. Other than that, the only thing I would suggest on the recommendation at the bottom is that we change that to subject to the minor changes as agreed by the CE into there, given that there may be a couple of small adjustments into there. And then really open for any questions that councillors may have.
Great, so no more staff.
I just wanted to highlight that we have made a few changes from the copy that you received. Very much prior year stuff, roundings, putting dashes in where there were blanks, spelling mistakes, things like that.
Spelling mistake.
Yeah, hydrological assets and yeah. So there was a few spelling mistakes, but that's very minor, and a couple of graphs at the front have changed. But so there's two subjects we're still thrashing out between us as to the pedanticness of accounting standards.
Okay, but based on that, we can still adopt?
Yes, absolutely. You can still adopt subject to changes.
Okay.
It's normal to have with the approval of the CE, and we've flagged up the two that might make a material difference. And they are very much pedantic accounting issues.
Great, thank you. You're okay, Susie, you got anything to add?
Three things that are really important to note. Three things, if you look at page 81, sitting on that comprehensive revenue and expenditure, there's large amounts still in here for silt and debris. You'll see the grant income coming out and you'll see a larger expense line. Completely normal, but they are a bit of a highlight in that revenue and expense line. Insurance claims will still come in next year. You will see we have made a small operating surplus this year against what we thought was going to be a deficit. But next year you will see greater, or hopefully greater, operating surpluses as our insurance claim money gets reimbursed off the back of all the expenses incurred. And finally, also on that statement of comprehensive income, page 81, you will see a very large gain in our revalued infrastructure assets. That's really important. You'll see the equivalent on our balance sheet. Our infrastructure assets have nearly doubled in value as a result of valuations this year that we performed. So really those are the three highlights that you'll see, and they will flow throughout the accounts.
Okay, we'll open up for questions. Thanks, team. Councillor Harding.
Kia ora, Chair. Thanks, team, for those explanations and introductions. First off, and really picking up on Susie's point, our accounts have been thrown every which way over the last couple of years through the effects of a cyclone, but also they're thrown through to large financial flows in abnormal places. So it becomes the end result becomes a bit of a lottery and meaningless. But it might be useful and certainly help my memory to go back and just be reminded about why we were budgeting a deficit, a $20 million deficit operating deficit at the start. Was the one simple reason for that, or was that a combination of the expectations of unrelated cash flows?
Yeah, that was an expectation of where the funding would come from for all of the cyclone-related items and where the expenditure would actually occur. We had a huge amount of the expenditure. They are sitting in the operating expenditure line, whereas what had happened the previous financial year, if you recall, that instead of expensing all of the repairs that we'd made to stop banks, we put them as an impairment onto the assets. So we'd sort of recognised expenditure in the previous year that we then got the funding for. So in doing that and setting the budget, we had set the budget based on a different assumption than what actually happened in 23-24, and therefore we were going to, the change from a deficit to a surplus is expected.
Yep. Okay. And just following on from that, then we're hoping that finally this will be the financial year that we get some significant insurance proceeds arriving, and based on conversations earlier this morning, I understand that they will go to paying off debt, additional debt that we've had to raise whilst we're waiting for those to come in. But just picking up on it, Susie, you mentioned that those will be recognised as income. So we'll expect to see, so that will inflate otherwise, at the top line, likely for a current financial year.
That will be used to reimburse that short-term debt.
Yep. Thank you.
Councillor McIntosh.
Chair, I just wanted to note that I really appreciated all the commentary around the work undertaken in respect of Gabrielle and reclassification of houses and all that sort of thing. And it is, we've talked about the disruption to the financials of the place as a consequence of that. But you think of the huge volume of work that's incurred in repair and so on, all of which is not business as usual. And I think the organisation, has copped a lot of flack for a whole range of reasons, but I think it should take a pat on the back for the extent of work that has been completed over and above normal business as usual in the period, and I'm glad that's noted to the extent that it is in the report.
Thank you for that comment. Councillor Sears, you got a question?
Thank you. Part 5, financials, page 79. Double checking, the subsidies and grants, the 151 million. This is the silt and debris funding, I'm assuming?
Yes, it's silt and debris funding and some funding related to the Niue stuff as well.
So aside from now the insurance payments that will come in this financial year, this is now the final wind-up of all of those grants and subsidies. No, there's still another.
So this is the balance date to 30 June.
Yeah, I thought it had finished.
As you know, that silt and debris fund's got till the 31st of December, so you're going to see the last bunch next financial year. Yeah.
So we should, from 24-25, we will see the final payments of the insurance. That's when we should catch up. And I remember actually, after the cyclone, Susie, you said, I think at least 2 years before we will see the final rollout. Yeah, okay. All right, so there's one more tranche of silt and debris funding that'll show up, and at that point all grants and subsidies will be out of the box.
There will be an immaterial amount still carried over for the Regional Recovery Agency, who have till the June 2025 to expend.
That's right. Okay, thank you.
I'll ask a question. Just that your point on the infrastructure assets, Susie, does that have any consequences? Go back a step. Presumably that's around the cost of building these has gone up, so that's driven the value up. Does that have any consequences like insurance?
Yes, will. This aspect has some large implications for us in terms of our insurance cover. And we will need to seek additional layers or premiums carry in order to insure those. banks don't necessarily get depreciated, so there is,
Pump stations
pump
too.
stations will. So there's a bit of up and down in terms of, but predominantly across properties.
Any further questions or?
I did have a question,
Oh, yes.
Chair, but I can't find it.
Sophie's getting organised. I've got one. Page 64, Group of Activities Emergency Management. The graphic on midway down on the right-hand side, actual expense 7.52 million, 82% under budget. The 7 million looks about the number I have in my head. The 82% under budget I can't process. Can you explain, please?
Sorry, could you give me that page number again?
Yep, so page 64, Group of Activities, we're showing 82% under budget spending and emergency management. And I'm sure my colleague, Councillor Curtin, will be extremely interested in why we're underspending by that amount in emergency management.
One of the things when we set the budget for the year, it was just directly following the cyclone, and we had plugged in quite a large amount of still recovery, response and recovery costs into there. Most of that was put against emergency management because that's where all the costs were being collated at that point in time. We didn't need to spend as much into there, and also started transferring stuff into areas where it was more aligned with our LTP activities in terms of the infrastructure work within flood resilience programs and the sediment and debris within policy and regulation in terms of pollution. That.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
ready
you.
now?
Through you, Chair. Page 61, the asset management spend of 96 million. So did the silt and debris funding flow through this budget, or is this all final stop bank? I think we're past that. I'm interested in where this...
61.
Yeah, where the 96 million. Because my timing, I'm having trouble with my timing.
So silt and debris didn't go through the asset management cost centre, that went through policy and regulation at the time. This will predominantly be rebuild activity.
Yeah. So that'll be the initial rebuild activity that was carried out, all the emergency repairs and everything to stop banks, which is then funded through NEMA and insurance as we put the claims through.
Right. So probably to you, Chief Executive, I'm just noting that the average asset spend is around 5 to 7 million usually in our asset management, and we delivered a $100 million program in that year, correct?
Yep.
That was before even the IMPO was set up. So this organisation, a lot of people are asking, how are you going to be able to deliver this work stream? We actually delivered $96 million worth of work separate from silt and debris over that year. It's hugely impressive.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, it was an amazing response to get that done as quickly, and using those pod systems to do that. We're now faced, I think, with the next challenge of constructing that new flood defence work, as you've alluded to, and perhaps the difference in the ability to do that quickly is that the repairs were done on places that we already own the asset and had the interest in the land. For the new pieces of work, we clearly have to go through a process with communities and then secure some sort of interest in the land to be able to do the building.
It's really worth saying that in easier English for our community who are really questioning why that's not moving faster. That's as simple as people own the land that we may need for some of these stop bank protections, and they may or may not be willing at this stage to share or lease or part with it.
I think there's always a negotiation for those things, but also we've got to do the design from scratch. So I think it's you're building at new locations from scratch, all the way through the design process. Whereas the repairs that were done really well immediately post the cyclone were on existing assets, known standard. Kind of, it's the physical get on with it. Whereas the new work is as you say, completely from scratch.
Thank you.
I'm just looking around. It doesn't look like Mike on the screen's got any questions. So, yeah, if no further questions, we could go to a motion. Oh, have you got that that addition that the staff wanted around?
Yes.
Yes. Yep. So, anyone like to move?
Mr. Chair.
Councillor Curtin, you'd like to move? Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Van Beek, thank you. Would you like to speak? No.
We'll make it short, but once again, thanks to staff for doing a fantastic job. And of course, if you know the dates when this was all done, it was during a very difficult time in the life of our council, and to have such a positive report coming out of it with some really big numbers, and as we alluded to before, work that normally wasn't actually planned in our space all being done, and some of us, I think, done at a promise that money would come at some stage from Central, and then going ahead and doing it. And I'm 100% sure I can speak on behalf of those affected. It's much appreciated, the work that has been done at such a great speed. So thank you very much, and for also a very clear report once again. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? No? No? I'll just say a few words. Anyone looking from the outside doesn't really know much what's gone on, and look at the report and see a lot of things not achieved and off track, and perhaps think what's going on there. But obviously, you know, this organisation, this region kind of got tipped upside down there at the time, and so just agree with the previous comments from Councillor Van Beek, and just the sentiment that, you know, everyone's had to pitch in here and change roles and do whatever it's taken really to I guess address the people of Hawke's Bay that have been impacted, and so, you know, we've done a great job, and the work's not over, but we do have to get back to business as usual as well. And so just well done to Nick and the team really for, you know, it was not an easy task for anyone. So thank you for wanting to take it on, Nick, and to the team. So and on that, I'll go back to Councillor Curtin. You're happy to not sum up, and all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we've just got a second item on the agenda about a new appointment in the Regional Planning Committee. Does anyone need to speak to this, or...?
I think we could largely, through you, Chair, take the paper as read. It's seeking to appoint Councillor Sears as a replacement for Councillor Rodley on the Regional Planning Committee.
Do you need to speak? No? No? If no one's...
Was there no better candidate?
He's the only other one on offer.
Okay.
It's a definite no.
Well, look, if...
I have you gladly.
Yeah, too late. Look, if there's no comment or questions to be had, I just really need a mover for the paper. And Councillor Harding, thank you. And a second, Councillor McIntosh. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
I think we need a speech from
I don't think we do. Very, very pleased to be joining the committee, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sears, for your commitment. Look, no further business. There were no minor items, so happy if someone wants to elect to close the meeting. Who's well practised.
I'm not, but I'm happy to take us through the new closing karakia that none of us have done before, I think, apart from perhaps council staff.
There you go.
We're happy to provide you some extra voice along the way.
Right, okay, I'll follow your lead then.
You're doing the new one?
Yep.
Are we? Okay.
Kia tau, ngā manaakitanga i te mea ngaro. Ki runga, ki tēnā, o tātou. Kia mahia te hua mā kihikihi. Kia toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te araha, toi te reo Māori. Kia tūturu, Ka whakamaua, kia tina,
Tina.
hui e, ai.
Well done.